The blazing Arizona sun beat down on the cobblestone streets of Phoenix as Sarah slammed the door of her home, her hands trembling. She could still hear the furious screams of Jason Thorne from inside. "Sarah, get back here right now! We're not finished talking!" But she had been finished for 3 years. 3 years of marriage had been enough to transform the once joyful and strong-willed woman she was into this ghost of herself, now wandering down Central Avenue with a vacant stare. It had all started so differently. Jason was the most successful manager at the construction company where she worked as an architect. He was tall, athletic, with a smile that could win over anyone, and a confident way of speaking that made her feel so secure. When he first asked her to dinner at a trendy restaurant downtown, Sarah thought she had found the man of her dreams. "You're incredible, Sarah," he had told her that first night, taking her hand in his. "A woman like you deserves to be taken care of, to be shielded from all the worries in the world." How naive she had been to believe that shielding meant love. The first hint of something sinister came during their honeymoon in San Diego. Sarah went to pay for a hotel bill with her credit card, but Jason stopped her firmly. "Real men pay for their wives, my love. Give me your card. I'll handle everything from now on." At first, it seemed romantic. Then it became suffocating. "Why do you need so much for groceries?" Jason would question her every time she asked for cash. $200 should be more than enough. I know what things cost." Sarah had inherited a considerable fortune from her late father. 3 undeveloped properties outside of Phoenix, 2 houses in the city center, and a savings account that had grown for years. But ever since she married, she had never seen a bank statement. "It's better if I manage everything, sweetheart," Jason would insist. "Numbers are a man's business. You just focus on being happy and taking care of our home." That afternoon in May, as she aimlessly walked the streets of her beloved city, Sarah remembered the conversation that had triggered her husband's latest rage. She had received a call from the notary, Mr. Davis, who informed her that he needed her signature to renew some documents for the inherited properties. When she told Jason, his face had completely transformed. "What notary? What properties are you talking about?" His voice was colder than a winter storm. "The houses and land my dad left me. The lawyer said some papers need to be updated." "I'll handle that," he interrupted abruptly. "Give me the notary's number. These things are too complicated for you." But for the first time in 3 years, something inside Sarah had rebelled against being treated like an incapable child. "They're my properties, Jason. I can talk to the notary myself." The slap came so fast, she had no time to dodge it. The sting on her left cheek still pulsed as she walked down the street, touching her face in disbelief. "Never, ever talk back to me again," Jason had told her with a chilling calm that froze her blood. "I'm your husband, and I know what's best for you." Now, sitting on a park bench, Sarah pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She had to call someone. She had to tell someone what was happening. But who? Jason had managed to slowly isolate her from all her friends. "Your single friends just fill your head with nonsense," he always said. "A married woman should focus on her home, not on coffee gossip." There was only one person left, the only person Jason had never been able to completely alienate her from, although he had tried. Her mother, Commander Brenda Morales of the Arizona State Police. Sarah dialed the familiar number, and when she heard her mother's firm yet loving voice on the other end, she felt like she could breathe for the first time in months. "Mom, it's me. I need you to come." What dark secrets was Jason hiding about Sarah's properties? Why did he get so violent when she mentioned the notary? And more importantly, what would Commander Brenda do when she discovered what was happening to her only daughter? Commander Brenda Morales was finishing a day's files when her cell phone vibrated on the gray metal desk of her office at the Phoenix Police Department. 25 years of police service had taught her to recognize an emergency tone in people's voices, but she never expected to hear it in her own daughter's. "Mom, it's me. I need you to come." Brenda immediately sat up in her chair, her maternal and police instincts activating at the same time. "Sarah, my girl, what's wrong? Are you okay?" On the other end of the line, she heard only broken sobs and ragged breathing. "I can't talk on the phone." "Tell me where you are." "I'm at the park near the fountain." "Don't you move," Brenda responded, already grabbing her keys and her service pistol. "I'm on my way right now." During the 15 minutes it took to get to the park, Brenda Morales replayed all the times she had a gut feeling that something wasn't right with Jason. From the beginning, that man had made her suspicious. Too controlling, too possessive, too interested in my daughter's finances. "He's a good man, Mom," Sarah had told her when she announced her engagement. "He takes such good care of me." But Brenda knew the difference between taking care of and controlling. She had seen too many cases in her years of service. She found Sarah exactly where she said she would be, sitting on the bench with her gaze lost in the water of the fountain. Seeing her up close, Brenda's heart sank. Her daughter had lost weight. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and something in her posture screamed defeat. "What did he do to you?" Brenda asked, sitting next to her and taking her hands in hers. Sarah looked up, and Brenda immediately saw the reddish mark on her left cheek. "He hit me, Mom," Sarah whispered, as if the words burned her throat. "For the first time, he hit me." Brenda's police training told her to stay calm, to ask the right questions, to follow protocol. But a mother's heart screamed at her to immediately go find Jason Thorne and make him pay for every one of her daughter's tears. "Tell me everything from the beginning," Brenda said, taking a small recorder from her bag. "And don't leave out any detail." For the next hour, Sarah told her everything. How Jason had taken complete control of her finances from the first month of their marriage. How he made her feel stupid every time she tried to make a decision. How he had isolated her from her friends with excuses that seemed reasonable. And finally, how he had reacted with violence when she mentioned the notary's call. "The lawyer told you exactly what documents needed renewal?" Brenda asked, her investigator's mind already working. "He just mentioned they were papers related to the properties my dad left me. He said there were some inconsistencies in the records that needed to be clarified." Brenda felt a chill. In her years of experience, she had seen many cases of real estate fraud, and they all started with inconsistencies in the records. "Sarah, I need you to tell me the truth. Does Jason have access to the documents for your properties?" Her daughter nodded slowly. "They're in the safe at the house. He convinced me it was safer for him to keep them, because I might lose or damage them." Brenda closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The pattern was too familiar, too calculated. Jason Thorne wasn't just an abusive husband. He was a professional con artist. "Honey, we're going to the notary's office right now. I have a feeling that what we're about to discover is not going to be good." As they walked toward Brenda's unmarked police car, Sarah suddenly stopped. "Mom, what if I'm overreacting? What if Jason is right and I'm just being too dramatic?" Brenda took her daughter's face in her hands and looked her straight in the eyes. "Sarah, listen to me carefully. A man who loves you never raises a hand against you. A husband who respects you never makes you feel stupid. And a life partner never takes complete control of what rightfully belongs to you." "But he says he's protecting me." "Predators always say they're protecting their victims, my girl. It's their way of justifying control." On the way to the notary, Brenda couldn't get a question out of her mind. How deep did Jason Thorne's deception go? And more importantly, what was he willing to do to keep his true intentions a secret? The answer was about to reveal something far more sinister than either of them could have imagined. The office of the notary, Mr. Davis, was in a restored colonial building on a busy street downtown. Brenda and Sarah walked up the stone staircase, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the silence of the late afternoon. The notary, a man in his 60s with perfectly combed gray hair and half-moon glasses, greeted them in his office, which was full of legal books and dark wood file cabinets. His expression turned serious when he saw Sarah's bruised face. "Miss Thorne, I'm glad you came. We have some very delicate matters to discuss," the lawyer said, inviting them to sit in the leather chairs in front of his desk. "Sir, my daughter has filled me in on the situation," Brenda intervened, showing her state police badge. "I'm Commander Morales, and I have reason to suspect there may be irregularities in the handling of Sarah's properties." The notary's face lit up with a mix of relief and worry. "Commander, it's a good thing you're here. What I have to show you is extremely serious," he said, opening a thick folder filled with documents. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Jason Thorne came to my office with a series of notarized powers of attorney, supposedly signed by his wife, authorizing him to sell the 3 properties inherited from Mr. Morales. Sarah stiffened in her seat. "What? I never signed any power of attorney. I didn't even know Jason had come to see you." "That's what I figured out when I carefully reviewed the documents," Mr. Davis continued. "That's why I called you. The signatures are very well done forgeries, but not good enough to fool someone with my experience. Besides, I found several inconsistencies in the seals and dates." Brenda felt her blood boil. Her worst suspicions were being confirmed. "What else, Mr. Davis?" "There's more, Commander. Much more." The notary pulled out another folder. "Your son-in-law didn't just try to sell the properties. He also submitted falsified documents to transfer the inheritance bank accounts into his name. According to these papers, Sarah would have authorized him to be the sole beneficiary and manager of all her assets." "Oh my God," Sarah exclaimed, covering her face with her hands. "But how could he do that? How did he manage to copy my signature so perfectly?" The notary exchanged a meaningful look with Brenda. "Ms. Thorne, does your husband have access to documents you have signed before? Work contracts, bank papers, marriage certificates?" "Yes, he keeps all our important documents in the safe. He says it's safer than me having them, because I might lose them." Sarah's voice broke as she realized the magnitude of the deception. Brenda stood up, her police training taking complete control of the situation. "Mr. Davis, I need copies of all these falsified documents. This is evidence of a serious crime. We're talking about document forgery, fraud, attempted misappropriation, and possibly criminal conspiracy." "Of course, Commander. I have everything ready for you," the notary said, handing her a folder. "But there's something else you should know. Mr. Thorne didn't come to my office alone." "What do you mean?" "He was accompanied by an individual who introduced himself as his business partner, a man named Tony. They explained that they already had buyers interested in the properties and wanted to close the sales as soon as possible. They were talking about amounts far below the real market value." Sarah froze. "Tony, Jason never mentioned any partner to me, much less that he had plans to sell my properties." Brenda began to take notes in her official notebook. "Describe this Tony, Mr. Davis." "A man around 40, solid build, black hair with a receding hairline, and a small scar on his right eyebrow. He wore a gray suit and spoke with a distinctive accent, maybe from the Southwest. He seemed, well, let's say, experienced in this kind of shady business." Brenda felt all her alarms go off. The description matched several real estate fraudsters who had files in her department. "Did they mention anything about other similar cases? Other properties?" "Not directly, but I did hear this Tony say something to your son-in-law. This process is just like the one in Tucson and Santa Fe. You know how it works." As if it were an operation they had repeated before. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Everything was starting to make sense in the most horrible way possible. Her marriage had not been about love. It had been a planned operation from the very beginning. "Mom," she whispered, turning to Brenda with tears in her eyes. "Do you think Jason married me just for my inheritance?" Brenda took her daughter's hands, feeling a mix of fury and pain she had never experienced. "My girl, I'm afraid it's worse than that. If this Tony is who I think he is, Jason isn't just an opportunistic con artist. He's part of an organized network that specializes in seducing women with property to steal everything they have." The notary nodded grimly. "I've seen similar cases in other cities. Attractive, manipulative men who study their victims for months before approaching them. They investigate their finances, their properties, their emotional vulnerabilities. Then, they create the perfect encounter to make it seem like a coincidence." Sarah remembered that first dinner, how Jason knew exactly what to say, how he had casually mentioned that he was looking for an independent and successful woman like her. He had even commented on how beautiful the city's architecture was, knowing that was her professional specialty. "How long had they been planning this?" she asked with a broken voice. "Probably months before you officially met," Brenda replied. "These criminals leave nothing to chance." The notary cleared his throat. "Commander, there's one more detail that could be crucial. When your son-in-law and his partner left my office, I heard Tony say, 'If the old lady doesn't cooperate, you know what to do. We can't let her spoil years of work.'" A chilling silence filled the office. Brenda felt a shiver run down her spine. "The old lady," she repeated slowly. "He was referring to you, Sarah's mom. And what do you think they meant by, 'you know what to do'?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Brenda stood up abruptly, her police instinct screaming that the danger was imminent. "That if they can't get your properties through good means, they'll try through bad ones. And after what happened at your house today, I'm afraid they've already started to escalate the violence." Sarah put her hands to her face, feeling her world crumble around her. The man she had shared 3 years of her life with, the man who slept next to her every night, was not just a con artist. He was a potentially dangerous murderer. "What are we going to do now, Mom?" Brenda put all the documents in her briefcase and looked at her daughter with that steely determination she had developed in 25 years of fighting criminals. "Now we're going to set a trap. But first, we need you to go home and act like nothing happened. We need more evidence, and we need to catch Jason and his partner in the act." "Go back home? Are you crazy? What if he does something worse to me?" "He won't do anything, because I'm going to be watching his every move. I have a plan, but I need you to trust me." Sarah looked at her mother, that strong woman who had dedicated her life to protecting others, and for the first time in months, she felt a spark of hope. But what they didn't know was that while they were planning their strategy, Jason had already discovered that Sarah wasn't home, and his reaction was going to be far more violent than anyone could have imagined. Jason Thorne paced back and forth in his living room like a caged animal, dialing Sarah's number for the 10th consecutive time. Each unanswered ring fed his growing paranoia. 4 hours had passed since she ran out after he slapped her, and her absence was starting to worry him in ways that went far beyond a simple marital dispute. His phone vibrated with a text message, but it wasn't from Sarah. It was from Tony. "Is the paperwork ready? The buyers want to close early tomorrow." Jason gritted his teeth. The whole plan was falling apart just as they were about to complete the biggest heist of their careers. 3 years of feigning love. 3 years of psychological manipulation. 3 years of building the perfect facade of a devoted husband could not be lost because of a single moment of losing control. But Sarah had touched a subject she wasn't supposed to. The notary. Why the heck had the old man called her? He was supposed to have everything under control, that the forged documents were perfect. The sound of keys in the door pulled him from his thoughts. Sarah walked in with her eyes red from crying, but there was something different in her posture. She no longer looked like the broken woman who had fled hours earlier. "Where were you?" Jason asked, trying to control the aggressive tone of his voice. "I was worried about you, my love." Sarah looked him straight in the eyes, remembering her mother's instructions. Act normal. Don't let him suspect you know anything. We need more evidence. I went for a walk to think. You're right, Jason. Sometimes I'm too impulsive. Each word cost her a superhuman effort. Jason's face relaxed slightly, but his eyes still studied her with suspicion. Come here, beautiful, he said, holding out his arms. You know I don't like to fight with you. It's just that sometimes it drives me crazy to see how other people try to take advantage of your good faith. Sarah approached, allowing him to hug her, while her stomach churned with disgust. She could feel Jason's phone vibrating constantly against his back. Who's texting you so much? She asked with feigned casualness. Work stuff, my love. Nothing important, he replied quickly. Hey, about that notary. I thought about what you said, and you're right. We can go together tomorrow to clear up all that paperwork. Sarah's heart raced. Jason was trying to buy time, probably to complete his fraudulent plans before she could do anything. Really? You don't mind if I go with you? Not at all, sweetheart. I just want to protect you from those lawyers who always try to confuse women with complicated legal terms, he said, stroking her hair with a tenderness that Sarah now knew was completely false. Jason's phone vibrated again, this time with a call. He looked at the screen and his expression subtly changed. Excuse me for a moment, love. It's my boss. I have to take this. Jason went to the backyard to take the call, but Sarah could hear fragments of the conversation through the open window. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Early tomorrow. Yeah, I already have access to the safe. Don't worry, Tony. Everything is under control. Sarah felt her legs tremble. Hearing Jason talk so casually about stealing her properties, after 3 years of pretending to love her, was more painful than any physical blow. If it gets difficult, you know about Plan B. We can't leave any loose ends. Too much money at stake. Plan B? What did that mean? Sarah remembered the notary's words. If the old lady doesn't cooperate, you know what to do. Her phone vibrated silently. It was a message from her mother. Are you okay? I have backup in position. If anything happens, scream for help as loud as you can. Sarah quickly responded. He's talking to Tony. He mentioned something about Plan B and not leaving any loose ends. Brenda's reply came immediately. Stay calm. We've already intercepted that call. We're recording everything. Jason returned to the living room with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Everything okay at work? Sarah asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Yeah, just coordinating some projects for tomorrow, he replied. Oh, my love. Do you know where your dad kept the original titles to the properties? The ones in the safe are copies, right? Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. Jason was trying to locate the original documents to complete the fraud. I think the originals are at the bank in a safety deposit box, she lied. My dad was always very careful with those things. Jason's expression hardened for a split second before he smiled again. How smart of your father. Do you have access to that safety deposit box? Yes, but I have to go personally with my ID. Banks are very strict about those things. Perfect. We can go tomorrow after the notary's appointment. Sarah feigned agreement, but inside she was terrified. Jason was planning a complete sequence. First the notary to validate the fake documents, then the bank to get the originals. All in one day. It was clear he was in a hurry to complete the theft. I'm going to make us some dinner, Sarah said, heading toward the kitchen. Great idea, my love. I'm going to check some papers in the study. As soon as Jason disappeared down the hall, Sarah silently opened the drawer where they kept the spare keys and took the one for the safe. If her mother needed more evidence, she had to see exactly what documents Jason had been forging. With her heart pounding 1,000 beats a minute, she headed to the study. The safe was partially hidden behind a landscape painting. With trembling hands, she inserted the key and turned the handle. What she found inside took her breath away. Not only were her inheritance documents there, but also complete folders with information on other women. Photographs, copies of IDs, bank statements, property titles. At least 6 different women, all with valuable properties, all apparently victims of the same scheme. One of the folders had a label that said, Tucson, completed. Another said, Santa Fe, completed. And a third one chilled her to the bone. Phoenix, in progress. Sarah Thorne. But the most arousing thing was at the bottom of the safe, a .38 caliber pistol, and next to it, a handwritten list with names and addresses. Her name was on the list, along with her mother's. Next to each completed name was a note. Eliminated, car accident, or eliminated, street robbery. Sarah covered her mouth to keep from screaming. This wasn't just about real estate fraud. Jason and his network were murdering the women after stealing their properties to eliminate any possibility of them being reported. "What are you doing in here, my love?" Jason's voice from the study doorway made her jump with fright. When she turned around, she saw that he was no longer pretending. His face showed a coldness that paralyzed her with terror. "I was just looking for—" Sarah stammered, trying to close the safe. "You don't need to look for anything anymore, my dear wife," Jason said, approaching slowly. "It seems you discovered our little secret ahead of schedule." Sarah saw Jason reaching for the safe, straight for the pistol. This was the moment to scream. "Help! Help!" Sarah screamed with all her might, just as she lunged for the study door. Jason reacted like lightning, blocking her path and violently pushing her against the wall. His mask of a loving husband had completely disappeared, revealing the predator he had always been. "Shut up!" he roared, pressing his forearm against Sarah's neck. "Do you know what you just did? Do you have any idea how much money is at stake?" Sarah's screams had activated the operation Brenda had meticulously organized over the last few hours. 2 houses away, Commander Morales and 4 elite state police agents sprang into action. "Code Red! Code Red!" Brenda spoke into her radio as they ran toward the house. "Victim is in immediate danger. I authorize use of force." Inside the study, Jason had taken the pistol from the safe and was pointing it directly at Sarah's head. "This didn't have to be this way, you know," he told her with chilling calm. "We could have kept playing happy couple until you signed all the papers, but you had to stick your nose where it didn't belong." Sarah was trembling uncontrollably, but something in her desperation gave her courage. "How many women have you killed, Jason? I saw the folders, I saw the names." A cruel smile spread across her husband's face. "You want to know the truth? The pure truth," he said, keeping the weapon pointed firmly. "You were number 7, Sarah. 7 beautiful, successful women with valuable properties, and all of them as naive as you. Why? Why do this? Why?" He laughed bitterly. "Why? Because it's easy. Because you, the independent and successful women, are always looking for Prince Charming to value you for your intelligence. It's pathetic how predictable you are." Sarah felt nauseous hearing how he reduced her to a simple business objective. "The one from Tucson left me $2 million in a ranch," Jason continued, as if boasting about his accomplishments. "The one from Santa Fe had a textile factory we sold for $8 million. But you, my dear Sarah, you're the grand prize. 3 properties in a development zone. 2 historic homes. We calculated about $15 million in total." "You're a monster," Sarah whispered. "I'm a businessman," he replied coldly. "The plan was simple. I marry you, I gain your trust. I take control of your finances. We forge the sale documents. I transfer everything to offshore accounts. And then, well, then you had to disappear so there would be no witnesses." The sound of breaking glass from the first floor interrupted his confession. Brenda and her team had broken in through the back door. "Police! Nobody move!" Brenda's authoritative voice shouted from the first floor. Jason panicked, pressing the pistol's barrel against Sarah's temple. "Don't come up!" he yelled toward the hallway. "I have Sarah, and I won't hesitate to kill her." Brenda's firm footsteps were heard climbing the stairs, accompanied by the metallic sound of weapons being cocked. "Jason Thorne!" Brenda shouted from the hallway. "I'm Commander Morales. Drop the weapon immediately." "The famous police mother-in-law," Jason mocked. "You know what? Your name is on my list too. Tony and I thought you might be a problem from the start." Brenda appeared in the study doorway, her service pistol pointed directly at Jason's chest. Her face showed a professional coldness that contrasted with the fire burning in her eyes as a protective mother. "Drop the weapon, Jason. This doesn't have to end badly for you." "Doesn't have to end badly?" He laughed hysterically. "Do you know how many warrants I have in 4 different states? Do you know that your dear daughter isn't my first wife?" Sarah felt her world collapse around her. She wasn't even his first fraudulent marriage. "In Nevada, I married a doctor who had a private clinic," Jason continued, enjoying the psychological torture. "In New Mexico, a businesswoman with 3 restaurants. In California, an architect just like your daughter. See the pattern?" Brenda kept her weapon steady, but Sarah could see the fury growing in her mother's eyes. "What happened to those women?" "Very convincing accidents," Jason replied with total coldness. "The doctor had a car accident on a lonely highway. The businesswoman was the victim of a robbery that went wrong. The architect, well, she resisted more than the others. Tony had to be more creative." "You son of a..." Brenda muttered through gritted teeth. "Don't you dare judge me," Jason screamed. "I gave all those women the best months of their lives. I made them feel loved, desired, protected. Doesn't that count for something?" "Love?" Sarah managed to say with a broken voice. "You call this love? Love is a fairy tale, sweetheart. Money is the only real thing in this world. And you were going to give me a lot of money." Just then, Jason's phone started ringing. It was Tony. "Answer it," Brenda ordered, "and put it on speaker. I want to hear your partner." Jason hesitated for a moment, but the pressure of Brenda's weapon against his torso convinced him to obey. "What's up, Tony?" "Jason, we have a problem. The buyers are asking for the final documents. Do you have everything ready?" Brenda signaled for Sarah to stay quiet. "I'm having some complications with my wife," Jason replied carefully. "What kind of complications? Don't tell me she's resisting like the one in California?" "Something like that. Listen, man, we've talked about this. If she doesn't cooperate voluntarily, we apply the plan that always works. A dose of a sedative in her coffee. We take her out to the canyon. We simulate that she tripped and fell off the cliff. End of problem." Sarah felt her legs tremble. They had planned her death with the same coldness with which you plan a business trip. Brenda had heard enough. With a subtle signal, she told her teammates to get ready to act. "Jason, are you still there?" Tony asked on the phone. "Yeah, I'm here." "Well, give her something to calm her down and bring her here. I have everything ready. First thing in the morning, we'll be signing the sales papers, and by tomorrow night, we'll be heading to Costa Rica with our 15 million. "Costa Rica," Brenda murmured, mentally recording every detail for the subsequent investigation. "Exactly. I already have the fake passports ready and the bank accounts open. We just need to get rid of the main witness." Jason looked directly into Sarah's eyes as he responded. "Got it. See you in an hour at the usual spot." "Perfect. And Jason, remember we can't leave any loose ends. If the police mom shows up, she has to disappear too." The call disconnected, leaving a deathly silence in the study. Brenda had heard everything she needed. This was no longer just about real estate fraud or domestic violence. They were facing a network of serial killers who had murdered at least 6 women and had planned to murder her daughter. "The game is over, Jason," Brenda said in a voice that chilled the blood. "You have exactly 5 seconds to drop that weapon before my team comes through that window." Jason turned toward the study window and indeed saw 2 snipers aiming at him from the building across the street. "How?" 25 years of experience hunting criminals like you," Brenda responded. "Ever since Sarah told me what happened, I knew exactly what kind of predator we were dealing with. The situation had reached a point of no return. Jason had to decide between surrendering and facing justice, or taking his murderous plan to its final consequences. The decision he made in the next few seconds would forever change the fate of everyone in that room. Jason Thorne looked out the window at the snipers, then at Brenda with her weapon aimed at him, and finally at Sarah, who was trembling in his arms, with the pistol's barrel still pressed against her head. In his eyes was the desperation of a cornered animal that knows its game has reached its end. "You know what, Commander?" he said with a twisted smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've forced me to change my plans. If I can't have your daughter's money, at least I'm going to take the satisfaction of watching you suffer." Without warning, Jason violently shoved Sarah into the opposite corner of the study and barricaded himself behind the solid wood desk, using the furniture as a shield, while he kept his pistol pointed toward the door. "Sarah!" Brenda screamed, lunging toward her daughter to protect her. The first shot echoed like a cannon in the closed space of the study. The bullet intended for Sarah's heart embedded itself in Brenda's left shoulder, making her spin and fall heavily against the metal file cabinet. "Mom!" Sarah screamed with a gut-wrenching wail that was heard throughout the neighborhood. "Shot fired, officer down!" Agent Jones roared into his radio as he prepared to spring into action. Jason, seeing that he had missed his target and had wounded a police commander, realized that he had crossed a line from which there was no return. It was no longer just about fraud or murder. He had shot an officer in the line of duty in front of witnesses. He was a dead man, literally and figuratively. Brenda, despite the stabbing pain in her shoulder, kept her weapon steady, aiming at Jason. Blood stained her uniform, but her determination remained intact. "It's over, Jason," she growled through gritted teeth. "Drop the weapon right now." But something had changed in Jason's eyes. He was no longer the calculating con artist who had manipulated Sarah for 3 years. He was a wounded and desperate animal who had lost all connection with reality. "If I go down, I'm taking you all with me," he yelled with a manic laugh. Jason began to fire indiscriminately in all directions. The bullets ricocheted off the walls, shattered furniture, and created absolute chaos in the study. Brenda pushed Sarah to the floor and threw herself on top of her to protect her with her own body. "Fire at will!" Agent Jones yelled into the radio. "The suspect has lost control." The snipers in the building across the street waited desperately for a clear shot, but Jason was moving erratically behind the furniture, making an accurate shot impossible without risking the victims. In the middle of the shootout, Jason's phone rang again. It was Tony, but this time he didn't answer. The device slid across the floor until it was close to where Brenda and Sarah were. Brenda, with her free hand, managed to reach the phone and answer. "Tony!" she yelled over the noise of the shots. "This is Commander Brenda Morales of the Arizona State Police. Your partner is finished." There was a silence on the other end of the line before Tony responded with the same coldness that had characterized all their conversations. "Commander Morales, how is your daughter?" The question, asked in an almost casual tone, chilled Brenda's blood. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that Jason was just a small piece on a very large board, and that if something happens to him, there are other pieces that can move to complete the game." Brenda immediately understood the threat. "Are you threatening my family?" "I'm not threatening anything, Commander. I'm just explaining how things work in our business. Jason knows too many secrets. If he talks, a lot of people are going to get hurt. Innocent people, entire families." Sarah, who was listening to the conversation, felt fear invade her again. Even if they managed to capture Jason, the nightmare was not going to end. "Listen to me, Tony," Brenda said in a voice that dripped with authority. "I don't know who you think you are, but you just threatened a state police commander. We're going to find you. We're going to dismantle your entire network, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison." "Oh, really?" Tony laughed. "Do you know how many commanders, judges, and prosecutors we have on our payroll, Commander Morales? Do you know how deep our reach goes?" Brenda felt a chill. Not only were they facing a network of fraudsters and murderers, They were facing a criminal organization with connections to the justice system. Besides, Tony continued, do you think Jason is the only one who knows your home address? The only one who knows where you work? The only one who knows what elementary school your daughter went to when she was a child? The last reference made Brenda realize that they had been watching her family for much longer than she had imagined. What do you want? Brenda asked, trying to buy time while her team continued the operation against Jason. It's very simple. Jason is going to walk out of that house. You're going to report that he escaped during the confusion, and we're going to disappear forever. Everyone wins. That's never going to happen. Then your daughter is going to end up like the other 6. The difference is that this time, it's going to be your fault, Commander. Brenda looked at Sarah, who had tears streaming down her face as she listened to the threats. Her mother's instinct fought against her duty as a police officer. At that moment, Jason stopped shooting. He had run out of ammunition. "Empty magazine," Agent Jones yelled. "We have a window of opportunity." 3 agents simultaneously burst into the study from different angles. Jason, in a last act of desperation, lunged for the safe, trying to get another weapon he had stored. Agent Jones got there first, tackling Jason to the ground in a perfect maneuver that left him completely immobilized. "Jason Thorne, you are under arrest," Agent Jones yelled as he put on the handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." But Jason did not remain silent. On the contrary, he began to scream like a maniac. Tony, help me. You can't leave me here. You know what's going to happen if I talk." Brenda kept the phone on, so Tony would hear everything. "I see your partner isn't as loyal as you thought," she told Tony on the phone. "Jason was always the weak link," Tony replied with contempt. "That's why we had contingency plans." "What kind of plans?" "The kind of plans a mother wouldn't want to hear, Commander." Brenda realized that Tony was serious. The capture of Jason had not ended the threat. It had escalated it. "Tony, please," Jason yelled as the agents took him out of the study. "Don't abandon me. We can make a deal." But the call had been cut off. Tony had disappeared, leaving only threats in the air and the promise of a revenge that could materialize at any moment. Brenda got up with difficulty, holding her injured shoulder. The blood had soaked her entire uniform, but what hurt the most was not the physical wound. It was knowing that she had saved her daughter from immediate danger, but that the war was far from over. "Mom, you need to go to the hospital," Sarah said, helping her sit down. "First, I need to make sure you're safe," Brenda replied. Tony wasn't bluffing. He's dangerous, and he has resources. Sarah looked toward the door, where Jason had been taken away. 3 years of her life had been a complete lie. The man with whom she had shared her bed, her dreams, her most intimate fears, was a professional killer who had planned to kill her from day one. "How am I ever going to be able to trust anyone again?" she asked with a broken voice. Brenda hugged her daughter with her good arm. "Because not all men are like Jason. Because most people are good. And because you're not going to let a monster like him destroy your ability to love." But as she said those words, Brenda knew that the most difficult test was yet to come. Tony was still free, and he had shown that he had no moral limits. The nightmare had not ended. In fact, it was just beginning. Paramedics entered the study to attend to Brenda's wound, but she resisted going to the hospital. "I can't leave Sarah alone, not while Tony is still free." "Mom, you have to get treated. I'll be fine." "No," Brenda said firmly. "From now on, you're not going to leave my side for a single second until we catch this entire network." Because Brenda Morales knew something that Tony was about to discover. A mother who has seen her daughter's life threatened does not rest until all those responsible pay for their crimes. And this particular mother had 25 years of experience hunting criminals. The real battle was just beginning. 3 weeks after the shootout at Sarah's house, Commander Brenda Morales was sitting in her state police office with her left arm still in a sling, but with a fierce determination that had grown in every day since that night. Her desk was covered with files, photographs, maps, and a web of connections that revealed the true magnitude of the criminal organization they had uncovered. Jason Thorne's interrogation had been like opening Pandora's box. Faced with irrefutable evidence and the threat of life in prison, the man who had terrorized Sarah for 3 years had completely broken down. Between tears and pleas, he had confessed not only to the 6 murders they already knew about, but to 4 other cases in Nevada, New Mexico, and California. "Commander," Detective Jones said, entering the office with more documents. "We just got confirmation from Interpol. Tony isn't American, he's Colombian. His real name is Antonio Restrepo, and he has warrants for his arrest in 5 countries for fraud, murder, and money laundering." Brenda studied Restrepo's international file. The photograph showed a fier old man, athletic build, a cold and intelligent gaze. But what caught her attention the most were the registered victims. 43 women in 10 years, all successful professionals, all with valuable properties, all murdered after being stripped of their assets. "What's his modus operandi in other countries?" "Identical to the one they used here," Jones replied. "He recruits local men, usually with charisma and an attractive appearance, teaches them psychological manipulation techniques, and turns them into his field operators. While they seduce and control the victims, he handles the financial and logistical part of the fraud." Brenda felt a chill as she realized that Sarah had been about to become the 44th victim of an international network of serial killers. "Any clues about his current location?" "That's the good news, Commander. Our contacts at the DEA and the federal police have been tracking his financial movements. We believe he's hiding in a rural area in Arizona, probably preparing his escape to South America." Just then, Sarah entered the office carrying coffee for her mother. Ever since the shooting, she had insisted on accompanying Brenda to work every day, unable to be alone at home and too nervous to return to her normal life. "Any news about Tony?" she asked, trying to sound casual but unable to hide the anxiety in her voice. "We're close, my girl," Brenda replied. "Very close." But there was something Brenda hadn't told Sarah. For the past few days, she had been receiving strange phone calls. They never said anything, just stayed silent for a few seconds before hanging up. She had also noticed a dark vehicle parked at different spots near her house, always with tinted windows, always disappearing when she tried to get closer. Tony Restrepo was keeping his promise to keep the family under surveillance. Brenda's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Captain Miller, her direct superior. "Commander, I need you to come to my office immediately. We have a situation." Brenda and Sarah walked together toward the captain's office. What they found chilled them to the bone. Sitting in front of Captain Miller's desk was a man in an elegant suit, dark glasses, and a presence that radiated authority and danger. Beside him were 2 men who were obviously bodyguards. "Commander Morales," the captain said with a tense expression. "I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Davis, legal representative of Mr. Anthony Mendoza." Sarah felt her legs tremble. Tony had sent his lawyer directly to the police station. It was a simultaneous display of power and a threat. "Commander," Mr. Davis said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "My client has sent me to propose a civilized solution to this misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Brenda replied with disbelief. "Your client is an international serial killer. My client is a legitimate businessman who has been falsely accused by a disloyal employee," the lawyer retorted. "Mr. Jason Thorne acted on his own, without my client's authorization or knowledge." Brenda laughed bitterly. "We have recordings of Tony ordering the murder of my daughter. Recordings that can be interpreted in many ways, Commander. My client was simply trying to calm down a hysterical employee who had lost control." Captain Miller intervened. "What is your client's proposal, Mr. Davis?" "My client is willing to generously compensate the Morales family for the inconvenience caused by his former employee. We're talking about a very significant amount, enough for Ms. Sarah to rebuild her life anywhere in the world she wishes. Brenda immediately understood what was happening. It was a bribe disguised as compensation. And in exchange for that generosity? In exchange, my client expects it to be understood that he had no involvement in the crimes committed by Jason Thorne, that any investigation related to him is dropped, and that the Morales family can live in peace without worrying about future complications. The implicit threat was crystal clear. Accept the money and stay quiet, or your family will suffer the consequences. Sarah, who had been silent until that moment, stood up with a dignity that surprised everyone present. "You know what, Mr. Davis?" she said in a firm voice that she hadn't had in months. "You can tell your client he can keep his dirty money." "Ms. Morales, I don't think you understand the magnitude of the offer." "I understand perfectly," Sarah interrupted him. "I understand that your client stole 3 years of my life. I understand that he planned to murder me, just like he murdered 43 other women. And I understand that he is now trying to buy his impunity." Brenda felt immense pride for her daughter. The broken and manipulated woman who had been Jason's victim had disappeared. In her place was a strong woman who had found her voice. "But above all," Sarah continued, "I understand that if we accept your money, other women are going to die, and that's not going to happen while I'm alive." Mr. Davis took off his glasses and looked directly at Sarah, with eyes that revealed all the coldness of the organization he represented. "Ms. Morales, I hope you don't regret this decision." "The only thing I regret is taking so long to see your boss's face," Sarah replied without flinching. Brenda stood up, ignoring the pain in her injured shoulder. "Mr. Davis, you can tell Antonio Restrepo that the Arizona State Police do not accept bribes. And you can also tell him that every threat he makes against my family will be used as additional evidence against him." "Restrepo?" the lawyer asked with feigned confusion. "I don't know any Restrepo. My client's name is Tony." "Your client can call himself whatever he wants," Detective Jones, who had been listening from the door, intervened. "But we have just received authorization from the Attorney General's office for a joint operation with the DEA. In 72 hours, we'll be knocking on the door of his hideout in Arizona." Mr. Davis's face hardened. It was clear he didn't expect the investigation to have advanced so quickly. "Well," he said, standing up, "it seems there's no basis for negotiation. Let's hope everyone can live with the consequences of their decisions." After the lawyer and his bodyguards left, Captain Miller turned to Brenda. "Commander, are you sure you made the right decision? We're talking about very dangerous people." "Captain, if I give in to the threats of these criminals, what message am I sending to my daughter? What message am I sending to all the women who could be victims in the future?" Brenda was right, and everyone in the room knew it. That same night, while Brenda and Sarah were having dinner at the family home under discreet police surveillance, they received a call that would change everything. It was the director of the federal police. "Commander Morales, I have news. The operation in Arizona was successful. Tony Restrepo was captured 2 hours ago, along with 5 members of his organization." Brenda felt a huge weight lift from her shoulders. "Was there resistance?" "Minimal. It seems your information about his location was perfect. We found him exactly where your sources indicated." "And the rest of the network?" "That's the best part, Commander. Restrepo had complete files of his entire operation. Names, photographs, bank accounts, fraudulently acquired properties, and even training videos, where he taught his operators how to psychologically manipulate victims." Brenda closed her eyes with relief. Not only had they captured the mastermind of the organization, but they had enough evidence to dismantle the entire network. "Commander, there's something else. Among Restrepo's files, we found a list of future victims. Your daughter wasn't the only one they had identified. There are at least 20 more women in different states who were being studied for future attacks." Brenda thought of those 20 women, who probably didn't know they were in the crosshairs of professional murderers. Successful, independent women with valuable properties, exactly as Sarah had been. Were you able to alert the local authorities? We're already coordinating with the corresponding state police. All potential victims are going to be notified and instructed on safety measures. When Brenda finished the call, she looked at Sarah, who had been listening to the whole conversation. It's over, my girl. It's really over. Sarah began to cry, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief, not fear. Mom. Yes, my love? Thank you for saving me. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being the bravest mother in the world. Brenda hugged her daughter, feeling how the last few weeks of terror finally began to fade. Don't thank me for doing what any mother would do for her daughter. Not every mother is a police commander. Sarah smiled. Not every mother would have known how to face professional criminals. And not every daughter would have had the courage to reject Restrepo's offer, knowing the risks it implied. 6 months later, during the trial of Jason Thorne and Antonio Restrepo, Sarah took the stand as the main witness. With a firm and clear voice, she narrated to the judge and jury how she had been manipulated, controlled, and finally targeted for murder by an international network of criminals. Her testimony was so powerful that several members of the jury openly cried. When the judge handed down the sentences, life in prison for Restrepo, 50 years for Jason, and lesser sentences for the rest of the network, Sarah felt that she could finally close that chapter of her life. But the true healing came later, when she began to receive letters from the families of Restrepo's other victims. Women who had lost their daughters, sisters, and mothers, and who thanked her for having the courage to face the killers. One letter, in particular, moved her deeply. It was from the mother of Patricia Miller, the architect from California, who had been murdered 2 years earlier. Sarah, I never knew my daughter Patricia, but I want you to know that your courage in testifying gave meaning to her death. Thanks to you and your mother, justice was done. Patricia can rest in peace. Sarah understood that her experience, however painful it had been, had a bigger purpose. She became an advocate for victims of domestic violence and fraud, and worked with international organizations to educate women about the manipulation techniques that predators use. Brenda, for her part, was promoted to director of the Special Crimes Division, specializing in cases of gender-based violence and organized criminal networks. A year after the trial, Sarah was in her new office. She had opened her own architectural firm, specializing in housing for women who were victims of violence. When she received an unexpected visit, it was Elena, a 32-year-old woman who had escaped an abusive marriage in Houston. Ms. Morales, Elena said, I saw your television interview about how to identify abusive relationships. I think my ex-husband is trying to do the same thing that was done to you. Sarah invited her to sit down and listen to her story. It was chillingly similar. A charming man who had appeared in her life just after she inherited a small family business, who had gradually taken control of her finances, who had isolated her from her family and friends. Elena, did your ex-husband ever mention a partner named Tony? Not Tony, but he did mention a guy named Rick, who supposedly helped him with his business. And now that I think about it, after I got divorced, I've seen strange cars parked near my house. Sarah felt her blood run cold. It was possible that there were more networks operating with the same scheme. She immediately called her mother. Mom, I think we have a problem. Restrepo's network might have been bigger than we thought. Brenda listened to Elena's case and came to the same conclusion. Either there are cells that operate independently using his methods, or it's another network entirely. Either way, we have work to do. And so, Commander Brenda Morales and her daughter Sarah continued their fight against the predators who prey on vulnerable women. Because they had learned that justice is not a one-time event, but a lifelong commitment. Because they had learned that the love of a mother and the courage of a daughter can defeat even the most dangerous criminals. And because they had learned that sometimes the best way to heal from a tragedy is by making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. The story of Sarah and Commander Brenda Morales became a symbol of hope for thousands of women across America and beyond. It showed that no matter how sophisticated the predators are, no matter how perfect their manipulations, there is always a way out. There is always someone willing to fight for you. And sometimes, that person is your mother. The story of Sarah and Commander Brenda Morales was based on real cases of criminal networks operating in the Americas. If you or someone you know is living in a similar situation, seek help immediately. You are never alone. There is always a way out. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-973. Remember, true love never hurts. True love never controls. True love never threatens. Thank you for joining me until the end of this story. Your time and support mean so much to this channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Tell me in the comments what you thought and what other stories you would like to hear. See you in the next video.